Hello! Welcome everyone to my reaction series for Arcane. Thank you very much for joining me once again. This week I'm going to do a very short intro because last week I had a very long preamble about all my favorite characters. The order of that has changed a little bit after episode 6, but not too much. I'll update you guys with that by the end of the series in my post-episode discussion for episode 9. I'm very much looking forward to this episode to see if Act 3 can carry on the amazing momentum that Act 2 brought, and most of all, to be honest, I'm looking forward to seeing if that Firelight's leader ends up being Echo, and if so, what the Firelights are all about, and what's going on there. Because they're a super interesting new plot element, and I'd love to learn more about them. But yeah, that's about it. Not going to ramble any longer. Let's just get right into this. Okay. Ooh. The Boy Savior? I'm listening to the lyrics, sorry. Politicians. Oh, what a great intro for the Firelights and the Boy Savior. That's their philosophy in a nutshell.
I told you the truth. Bullshit. What was that glowing stone?
That's what I thought.
What's going on? Hey, stop! Get your hands off of me!
They only take Vi? Could this Boy Savior have some sort of connection to Vi? Who knows? Okay, that's not Echo. But, I'm guessing he's a grunt.
You shy or just ugly?
Ooh.
You look good for a dead girl.
Oh, I love the character design. So, I was listening to the lyrics of that whole Firelights rap video thing that was going on. The visuals were great, by the way. I still paid attention to them, but I was also just trying to listen. And there was lots and lots in there about the politicians kicking back. We're going to fight back, while they play their Game of Thrones or whatever. He's doing this for all the oppressed people. The foundations of this Firelight's cause seems to be getting back at the misery, because of the misery that's been thrust upon all these people. And I don't think he's only talking about Piltover. I think he's talking about Silco as well, because clearly they're trying to interrupt their operations too. But yeah, that was a great introduction for the philosophy of the Firelights and this new Echo. Can't wait to see.
Echo? What the hell is this all about?
What were you doing with Jinx?
Her name is Powder, and I just found her when you and your goons showed up. It's me, Vi. Same person who used to take you down to the junk heap and hose you down when you got covered in grease.
Look at his disinterest.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I thought you were dead. Now you show up with a Pilty and give her a tour of the lanes?
You were
Pilty.
following us. Why didn't you say something?
I didn't know if I could trust you.
So you just come out swinging?
Gee, I wonder who I learned that from.
Oh, well, you should have learned more. You still punch like a little boy.
And you still block with your face.
I was wrong. There's no disinterest here at all.
When you wouldn't
That was a front.
I missed you, little man.
How long have you had those off?
Wow.
How long have you been whining?
That kind of hit me a little. He's not disinterested at all. That's the front he's got to display to the world. He's reaching out for these things, for Vi.
Nature has made us intolerant to change, but fortunately, we have the capacity to change our nature.
And this is Shimmer?
Victor on Shimmer. Please no.
You aren't here about the plans, are you? I know the look of a doomed man. Love and legacy are the sacrifices we make for progress. It's why I parted ways with
That's a great line. That's why he parted ways with Heimerdinger.
Jace will understand.
Hammer work is such a delicate art.
How'd you find me?
You're the de facto head of the council. People notice where you go.
I tried taking it apart and it nearly killed me. Whoever built it knows exactly what they're doing.
They do indeed.
This and Shimmer. It's hard to believe what they're capable of.
Is that what's really bothering you?
He was my mentor, Mel. And I betrayed him.
Him raising his hand last at the
Everything you
council?
said- My family cast me out, and yet part of me still loves them. It's your time now, Jace. No more red tape. You can bring
Red
Hextech
tape?
to the masses just like you've always dreamed.
First, I have to save Victor. He disappeared. He does that sometimes. No sign of Caitlin either.
The Kiraman girl?
It's just...
Through this.
He's still fixating on these people from his
I'll start the
past.
council, but they'll soon need their leader.
Yeah. So a part of her still loves her family.
All our business is down.
I think that's really
Enforcers are
important.
searching anyone who,
Marcus is following my orders, preventing Vi and Caitlin from returning.
or he's finally flipped. The Chem Baron scheduled an assembly.
Chem
I've
Barons.
had enough headaches.
Let's just say I didn't always see eye to eye with my old man.
Hmm.
She'll come to you when she's ready.
He's bothered by this, for sure. That Jinx is, upset at him. Oh yeah, she got pretty badly, cut. Oh,
Oh, she's just some stupid topsider.
the mirror is very metaphorical.
Caitlin.
Firelight representation? Is that, foreshadowing something?
Is that a real tree?
Pretty cool, huh? When I first saw it, I knew
Beautiful.
this was the place. If a single seed can make it down here, so could we. Silco flooded the lanes with shimmer. He didn't care what it did to people.
Hmm.
Everyone here was an addict or a victim. They needed somewhere safe to start again.
I should have been there.
This is adding
I
so
just
much
wait
substance
for
to
that day.
Echo.
Powder's gone, Vi. All that's left is Jinx, and she belongs to
You're
Silco.
wrong. She's still in there. I can reach her.
She's right. She's right. She is still in there. Very
my sister.
slightly. Expanding, Zon. The Zon side of things very much. Oh, they have, like, this tribute.
This is everyone we've lost. The price of our freedom. Your sister works for him not because she has to, but because she wants to.
He's right about
I'm
that.
sorry, but that's who she is now.
So Silco's the primary enemy. And they've restricted the borders. Oh, I don't think he should be here in these fumes.
Do you have any idea how this looks? I order a blockade and my own partner violates it.
Oh,
You ordered this?
I told you I knew someone. Well, you didn't say they were from the Undercity.
What difference does that make?
They're dangerous.
come on, Jace.
I'm from the Undercity. Right.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I had a
boy.
lot on my plate. Was your friend able to help?
No, he said nature was resistant to this sort of tampering.
He's leaving out an important part of that. I feel uneasy about this. Victor is keeping secrets very intentionally about what Singed proposed.
We're bleeding money, and for what? His dreams of rebellion. He's
Ooh.
losing control.
What a character
If we
design.
stand,
Oh. So this is
we
like
should be.
the Undercity's
Ever
equivalent of the
since it
council.
started, we're all wondering, what's your plan to fix this? We should cut a deal and give back the gemstone. Better to have some trade than none at all.
The border issue is temporary. Jinx will deal with it.
This is so cool. I love how they're expanding the Zon
Your
politics.
dogs are for How are you meant to bring Piltover to heal if you can't handle your own people? Huh?
That's his weakness. Oh.
You don't recognize
No mask for him.
it. Have you forgotten where we came from?
Oh my god.
But I pulled you all up from the depths. Offered you a taste of topside. I gave you life, but you've grown fat and complacent. Too much time in the sun.
Oh. This whole time he has not put on the mask. He was holding it in that whole
Came from
time.
a world where there was never
Oh, this is a great
That is why
scene.
we fight. you remember.
Please.
Oh, what a menace.
Don't forget again.
Oh, what a scene. That was amazing. That did so much. Silco, Zahn, the whole situation, the whole political situation. What a great scene.
Good meeting.
This guy has so much authority. Because they're not wrong. He does have a weakness, and it is Jinx. But that is his only weakness, it seems like. Medarda?
I've had word from our friends overseas. Piltover looks vulnerable.
It's too soon. Jace isn't ready.
This arrived for you.
Family crest? Look at this guy.
Listen, let her go. I brought her here. It's me you want.
My hero.
But I thought they were hurting you.
Vi tells me I can trust you.
Oh, look at this duo.
You get a pass back topside, that's it.
That was kind of sweet of Caitlyn, despite them quarreling beforehand. And he's...
Let me help you with that.
I didn't know. Marcus never told me she was in Stillwater.
But you found out she came back. You lied.
I wanted to protect you.
I don't think he's lying about wanting to protect her.
Have you forgotten how she left you? Who found you? Who cared for you? Gave you a home?
Wow.
I am your family. Everyone else betrays us.
What a character. Silco is so good.
I need you. Now more than ever, you have to complete the weapon.
He needs her for multiple reasons. What a dynamic that these two have.
It's beautiful.
If your people had your way, it'd be rubble and ash.
Hmm.
Your people hunt us. Silco pays them to do it.
That's not possible. You're wrong.
Say that one more time.
Echo, she believes what she's saying, okay? She's not your enemy.
Caitlyn's the best possible person to understand this, though. She has these biases, but she's still open-minded.
Someone with the right knowledge could build any hex tech device. If enforcers are becoming more aggressive, that's why.
We could beat Silco with this.
That won't solve things. Echo, it's wrong what's been done to you. You'd be well within your rights to keep it. But if you do, this cycle of violence will never stop. This city needs healing. More than I ever realized. Please, let me help you. I have a friend on the council. Let me take the gemstone to him.
She has the best perspective for an amicable solution to this.
I'm the one who gives it to them.
She is the best person for that job.
That would mean they've turned it into a weapon.
Well, do we know this for certain?
We can't afford to wait to find out.
Wait, what are you suggesting?
You want us to build weapons?
What does she get from home?
Absolutely not. That is not why we invented Hextech.
I'm only asking you to prepare to defend your people. If we're lucky, we'll never need to use it.
It's not going to be that simple. And Caitlyn's going to try to come to him with this proposal. I don't know. This guy's got the world on his shoulders.
You cannot be considering this.
What if she's right?
We agreed Hextech was to improve lives, not to take them.
We may not have a choice.
Victor...
Always a choice.
I need to think.
That shows Victor's heart, that he's not in it just for his ambitions, you know? They want to improve lives, not take them. This is obvious already, but that's just a further emphasis of it. Oh. Oh no. Heimerdinger's, that was the scene we saw with Heimerdinger's memory. He's giving it all sorts of thought from all sorts of different perspectives. This is so good. Ooh. Your heart goes out to him.
I'm worried I have to do something I never thought I would.
Slippery slope. Is that fan letter or something? Timer? Oh my gosh. I think that was an indication of it working, whatever it consists of. What was Heimerdinger doing? So they need to cross the border to get to Jace for this proposal that Caitlin will give. I don't expect it'll be that simple, though.
I can't leave her again.
You can't change her.
I have to try.
Don't get yourself killed.
No promises.
She remains the forefront of her mind. Oh no. Oh no.
Shut up. It's just a goodbye hug.
Oh no. The little swipe on the cheek. Oh, Marcus.
Sir, I have proof. Silco's behind everything.
He knows. Oh no. That was an amazing shot. Yeah. You can understand every perspective in this situation. He's getting it back. For Silco, I'm guessing.
Liar.
Oh boy.
I told you to leave this alone.
What a backdrop. Was that Jinx is doing? Is arm missing? Oh, the song from the beginning. Oh, I got chills. This is the song she sang in the first scene of the series.
Tell my
Daughter.
Tell my daughter.
Oh my god. Oh. Oh god. Ooh! He got it? He got it. Yep. Oh no. Oh, I swear the episode better not end.
Oh, look who it is. The boy savior.
Oh my god. What is this? Oh my god, what a shot. Oh my god. Oh, that's so good. Oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever. Seeing flashback to the past. While seeing, yeah, he saw. He can't just see her as Jinx. Of course he can't. I'm pretty sure I had my mouth just my jaw just hitting the ground for that whole Echo versus Jinx sequence. That was phenomenal. Oh my goodness. Oh, Act 3 is off to quite a good start. Okay, so what a stunning episode. That was absolutely amazing. Brilliant way to start off Act 3 and sort of follow through on a lot of the seeds planted throughout Act 2. It was just so good. From start to finish, dynamic in the storytelling, tons of substance. Throughout the entire episode, there's just such a sense of there being so much substance packed into these small little scenes, interactions, details that you might sort of lose track of if you don't really think about them. But they say so much. They give you so many new layers to the story, to the character dynamics, to the themes and the overall, presentation of the writing. It is just, this episode was just packed to the brim with a lot of this minimalistic storytelling that says so much with so little, and I'll try to point them out as I go along. I'm a little worried and stressed out about this discussion, about this reaction, because there is so much to talk about, and I just hope I don't forget anything. But I'll do my best, and let's get started, I guess. So I actually want to start with the bookends for this episode. Two really amazing scenes, very stylized scenes, them being the sort of rap video, sort of introduction to the Firelights proper, in the form of a rap video, and the fight between Echo and Jinx. Holy shit, that second one completely floored me. My jaw was on the ground the entire time. I'll get to that in a second. But the music video sort of thing in the beginning of the episode was really good in terms of summing up things that we may have already gotten through subtext from previous episodes about the Firelights, but sort of confirming it in a really stylish package. I really loved how they started off the episode in that way. Bit of an abstract parallel, but it reminds me of the cold open for Breaking Bad. So I just looked it up to double check. The cold open of Breaking Bad Season 2, Episode 7. You can look that up if you want. Bit of an abstract parallel, like I said, but it reminded me directly of that in terms of the role it played, in terms of summing up certain concepts in a really interesting way. I won't spoil anything about that, but if you remember it, hopefully you can get the parallel I'm getting at. But yeah, it was so good in summing up things. I was paying attention to the visuals because they were great, but more than anything, I was listening to the lyrics because I thought that they might be indicative of something. And they were. I didn't get all of it, but there was a lot of talk about fighting back, about these politicians sitting on their asses and being lazy, and them carving their way forward, finding a voice and breaking through and just fighting a way through this world from the perspective of those who have been oppressed, those who have been hurt, those who have no voice, and giving a voice to those who are unable to speak previously. Just the Firelights being this sort of anarchist faction for those who are downtrodden. That's the vibe I got from it. And that's the vibe I got about the Firelights beforehand, but nice to have some of that confirmed. Now, it's hard for me to talk about that fight between Jinx and Echo, but I don't really have much to say because it speaks for itself. But it was just one of the most amazing things I've seen in a long time in any form of media. I was in total shock the entire time. I could hardly react. I couldn't put two words together. It was amazing. It was insane. The music insert, the way they used the clock as a sort of pendulum for the rhythm, and then the way that it's flashed back to the context of those two in the past, how they used to play with each other, how Echo used that as a foundation for this fight, and how he seems to have picked up some sort of skill to allow him to see into the future a little bit. Maybe it's an instinct, maybe it was less literal than that, I'm not exactly sure, but there are clocks associated with Echo's character. It seems that he can see a little bit into the future and use that for combat, just sort of judge what the opponent's going to do. And he had extra context, extra emotional context for the scene by doing a bit of a flashback to the times where he and Powder would play. So that was very emotional, but it was contrasted by this super upbeat, super hype song. And I just had an instinctual reaction to it. I was just completely floored. That was so good. That was amazing. That was maybe my favorite moment of the show so far, just because of how out there and bold and creative and effective it was. And it says a lot about how Echo still... I'm going to get into this in a little bit, but Echo continuously says to Vi throughout the episode that Powder is gone. But I think this flashback says that he might be saying that, but he kind of has a little bit of hope that she isn't completely gone. Why else would you flash back to things about Powder and her habits and the times you used to play together in your mind if you believe that Jinx is this completely distinct and new person? There's no reason to, right? So he still thinks of her as Powder a little bit. He still sees Powder. He's not completely forgotten about her. That's just what he says. So that was some nice indirect storytelling as well. And I think the idea of him still seeing her as Powder, it works in practice. You can say all those things if you want to Violet, to tell her the reality of this situation, and he does have many points, as I'll get into. But the lasting impression of that scene for me was right at the very end when he has his fist in bloodied Jinx's face. Her nose is all bloody. She's looking at him with desperation in her eyes, and all he can see is his childhood friend that he's currently beating up. And he can't do it, right? He can't do it. So yeah, you only think of her as Jinx? Are you sure about that, bud? No way. Yeah, so let's just get into Echo. Why don't we? In the beginning of the episode, after the music video sort of thing at the start, we get Caitlyn and Vi bound together, tied up, and Vi alone is taken to talk to the leader, to the boy savior. The minute that happened, I knew this had to be Echo. Why else would you need to talk to just Vi, right? So the reveal wasn't huge or anything or shocking, but it was very cool. I like his design a lot. It's one of my favorite in the show, his post-timeskip design. The hair looks great, the face paint, the look on his face, it just sticks out. It's very iconic, and it tells you a lot about the type of authority he seems to have at this point in time. We get the OP, and then Vi and Echo have a conversation, and my initial reaction was incorrect. I said during the reaction that, well, let me get to two things. Firstly, another sort of emphasis of the fact that Vi is still very much the person that Vander told her to not let go of, to not lose that sense of heart and goodness and who you are and your connections. I said in a previous reaction that Vi has not lost that sense of self, not at all. And this is another occurrence to hammer that home. Because, of course, she's angry at first. She chews Echo out. But when she knows what's going on, when she knows who he is, and more or less what the situation is, the first thing she does is give him a hug. She says, "I missed you, little man." And that really got to me. That really choked me up. And I wasn't expecting it to at all. I was pleasantly surprised by that. And there are a lot of elements to why it made me so emotional, and I'll get into a bit of those in a second. But yeah, it was just nice from a Violet standpoint to see that from her. I don't have a ton to say about her in this episode, but that little tidbit was nice. And then so from Echo's perspective, I initially made the incorrect assumption from the way he was acting that he was disinterested, that he was cold and detached, and that's what it seemed like. And I made that assumption because, you think of this person who has seen the things he has, who has experienced the loss he has, grown up where he has, and you see the end point of his development. He has become the leader of this anarchist group. The leader of that sort of thing has to make difficult decisions. He has to know about the horrors of the world, the things that most people don't want to think about. He's been exposed to all sorts of things, and he has seen Jinx, one of his childhood friends, completely betray him. He has experienced a lot. He has gone through tons of pain. And so my initial assumption through through that sort of snapshot of what he's gone through and his behavior towards Violet, he was acting disinterested at first. He was a bit standoffish. So my initial reaction was that he had become cold and detached. But as soon as Vi starts to open up to him and show care for him, that completely fades away and is shown to be a shallow front. It was believable to me at first, but very quickly we see that isn't the case. That isn't him at all. That's a front he puts on because he's likely afraid to reach out and care for these people. Who knows how many people he can genuinely confide in. He has camaraderie with a lot of people. He saved a lot of people and has genuine respect all over the place. But how many people as the leader can he open up and be vulnerable to? Not many, if any, I bet. And so I'm so glad that he was able to have this moment with his long-lost friend, the person that he cares so much about, that he loves probably, as an older sister or something like that. His tear when she hugged him said a lot. I just got the impression that he has, for maybe years now, not been able to be properly himself, not been able to be the little boy who had to grow up way too fast. And so as a result of this distrust, the pain he's experienced, how he's learned that opening yourself up to care and all these sorts of things can only get you hurt, it's not that he is not caring. It's the exact opposite. He is super caring, but he tries to pretend that he isn't to not get attached to things. It's like a repulsive defense mechanism, you know? And that's super sad. That's so sad that he's had to grow up this way, not trusting in these things. But it's so great that he has Violet now. They get separated at the end, but for this period, I don't know if they're going to come back together, but for this period at least, I'm so glad he was able to have someone to properly confide in from his past that he thought was completely lost. So all these little elements and bits of subtext that added up sort of manifested in that moment where they hugged, and that's, I think, why it got to me a lot. But yeah, him being the leader of the Firelights puts things into perspective. It makes you see why they do the things they do. He obviously has no need to be attached to the Enforcers at all. He's hated them for obvious reasons since he was a kid. Since he was born, they've been doing awful things to him and his people. Same with Silco. Silco was the direct cause of death and destruction for so many people he loved, for the disrepair and spiraling of his home. And again, through how he describes that, we saw in episode 6, visually, all these things. We saw what had happened to the Undercity. But him actually saying it and talking about these things really nails home that while Silco's motivations are understandable, you know, he wants respect, he wants to rise above all of this, he wants to fight for his right to be put on equal standing, or now higher standing, than these people that he detests, that have been oppressing them for so long, not giving them the opportunity and respect they deserve. It's inhumane. So you understand his motivations, but the trickling byproducts of this are just heinous. They're awful. It's led to so much disrepair and misery for the 90% of Zon, or whatever percent it is, that is not directly benefited by him doing these operations. You know, there's a minority that is benefited by it for sure, but the rest of them, he doesn't bother to accommodate them. And that's another reminder that Silco, while being understandable in some ways, through being compassionate in some ways, through having these layers to him, despite all that, he's very much an awful person. An awful person and very much a villain, despite his connection to Jinx. So yeah, I got that from Echo talking about all these things. I'll talk much more about Silco and Jinx later on, but back to Echo. So yeah, it makes sense that having grown up this way, he would see all of this and he would just be sick of it all. Silco's way is not his way. He despises that. And the Enforcer's way, he's not going to abide by their rules. So what better to do than carve your own path through this third way, through the Firelights? It's just very natural. That trajectory of his character makes a ton of sense. And the way they feel free now and seek freedom, and the way he mentioned that as being the result of the deaths of their former comrades, was very touching. You know, they're doing this for them. They're doing this for their home, for each other, for themselves. You know, they're interrupting operations for Silco, operations for Piltover. They're aggravating them. They're frustrating them. They're not allowing these two parties to have things their own way, and they're trying to enact their own way to fight back. And that's very natural, of course. And the way that he described to Vi the deaths of those he loved being what caused this freedom for them, being what allows them to take this stance, was very touching. Because I think of Vander, and I think of the deal he made, and what he wanted more than anything was prosperity for his people. He did the best he could with what was given in his situation. If he took things further than what he did, if he fought back genuinely, it would lead to disaster and more death. He did the best he could at that point in history. Now is a different point in history, a time for them to fight and do these operations and be pragmatic. So while the manifestation of their acts is very different from the way Vander did things, I think it carries forward the spirit and sentiment of Vander in a really touching way. And Echo is an amazing spearhead for that, for all those operations. He has brought together all these people. You see different races, different species, humanoid creatures, all sorts of different people who have been downtrodden and stepped on and spit on, come together for this cause. And he gives them a place to call home. not just physically, but, emotionally. All these people have a home now. They have freedom now, as he said. And that's wonderful. You see their hideout, their getaway, this tree that they've made their home. And it's so starkly different in color palette from the rest of the series, the rest of the places in the setting. Obviously, Zon, the Undercity, has been perpetually associated with toxic green, right? That luminescent toxic green. And then we have these sort of fluorescent lights that we associate with Jinx now. Violent purples, pinks, blues, and darkness. That's the general color palette for the Undercity. For Piltover, initially, it started quite bright, as you're introduced to it through the opening heist mission, through things like Jace's story early on. But as the story has progressively gotten darker and our characters have been led into darker and darker places, the color palette has reflected that in Piltover. So one of the places in Piltover where we went to was Jason Medarda's scene. That scene is bathed in black and red, very dark, very oppressive. And then there's another scene later on with Victor, who we associate with Piltover, talking with Singed, again with the Undercity aesthetic. Now, obviously that was physically in the Undercity, but it was a Piltover plotline. So that's just an indicator of how things have progressed darker and darker, visually. Also, there's the scene on the bridge where there's the blockade, and Jace and Victor are talking, and there are all these flares and smoke and flashbangs or whatever everywhere. It's just very murky, and it looks like the air is dirty and all that sort of thing. Contrast that with the Firelight's hideout. There is sun beaming down. It is bright. There are bright greens, bright blues, very natural, and not as opposed to the artificial, toxic-looking lights from the underground. And it just conveys this sense of bright harmony, prosperity for these people. It's the first location since the beginning of Act 2 in Episode 4 where I've really felt like this is a ray of light of a location. It's maybe the most uplifting location in the entire series, which is nice to balance after the sort of very melancholic tone of the past few episodes. It was nice to see that this place is such a shining hope of light for these people, and Echo is the cause of that. Echo is the catalyst, and this did so much for his character. It really shot him up the ranks. He is a great leader for these people, but at the same time, he's also that little boy. At the same time, he needs support. He needs emotional support and someone to confide in, and Violet was able to do that, and I think that's wonderful. That was great. So future AJ, editor AJ, coming in hot right here. It's been quite a while since I watched episode 7, and since then I've sort of gathered my thoughts on it a bit better and come up with a few things that I wanted to articulate in this reaction that I wasn't quite able to. So here and there I'm just going to be adding little points that I wanted to talk about that I just didn't really dwell on in the discussion itself. I wanted to talk about everything. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to, and I'm aware that this is already the longest video on the channel by quite a bit, and that I'm adding to it, but who cares? I mean, I have more to say. So I talked quite a bit about Vi and Echo and their interactions and their dynamics and that sort of thing, and how lovely it was to see them together once again. Something that I didn't talk about as much was how they sort of compare and contrast to one another, how they're very similar, lots of parallels that I saw between them. So as I discussed, Echo is now a leader. He's the leader of this new uprising, this Firelight's uprising. And so he's had to grow up very quickly, make a lot of difficult decisions, no doubt, and harden himself to take on this role. And he wanted this role for himself, no doubt, but at the same time, that's still very difficult for someone like him to do. He's had to mature incredibly quickly. Just a few years ago, he was that little tiny kid. He was little man. And now he's this authoritative leader. He's had to learn about the ins and outs of leaderships very quickly and very efficiently. I think that's clear. And what I find interesting about that is that that's a big similarity he has with someone he just now met and is just now able to open up to in Vi, his childhood friend, big sister figure. Pre-timeskip, Vi had to deal with a lot of similar sorts of feelings that he's dealing with now, a lot of similar sorts of lessons, and she had Vander to teach him. And I don't think that Echo has really had a mentor to tell him the sorts of things he should keep an eye on, but he's done incredibly well. I think that the story is showing us that he's a great leader, or at least a good one. But the point is, there are lots of parallels here, because Vi has had to learn a lot of the things that Echo has had to learn. She was the leader of Milo, Clagger, and Powder, and Echo himself to an extent. And she had to learn about, you might be focused on these goals. You might be focused on your own freedom, on benefiting those who you love, benefiting yourself, searching out what you think that you deserve, a life that you deserve, a happy life. And that's all great. So that furious determination and focus on that goal is what a leader needs. They need an end goal. But as well as that, as I've said in previous reactions, you need to temper that with reason and logic and broader perspectives and broader thinking. And Vander helped Vi learn a lot about that. Something that I didn't mention in episode 2, the episode 2 reaction that I just realized while I was editing it, but didn't add in for some reason, is that towards the end of the episode when Vi turns herself in, it was explicit that she was turning herself in, and I knew that in episode 3, but that's shown to us in episode 2, because the subtext that I missed out on initially is that Vi had sneaked and stolen the little flask or the message bottle, whatever that thing is, that Grayson gave to Vander. She sent it to Grayson to say, okay, yeah, we've got some sort of deal going on right now, so come meet me or whatever. It was a signal to Grayson that some sort of deal was going to go down, and then she herself took it upon herself to turn herself in. And she does this immediately after the talk with Vander about war not being what it's all cracked up to be for these so-called revolutionaries, that you need to have broader perspectives. And so she really, I talked about how she took that in. I talked about how she seemed to be very receptive to that idea, but a bit unsure. It seems that in the end, she wasn't unsure. She took that in, and she agreed, and she used what Vander taught her to turn herself in for the good of Milo, Clagger, and Powder. She viewed this as the only way to do it. So that was her thinking, and I only realized it in retrospect. But that's some nice subtext in episode 2. And so she learns all these things, and obviously the ideal way for this plan to have panned out would be for her to turn herself in, she goes to jail or prison or whatever, everyone else gets off scot-free. That wasn't going to happen. They were looking for 4 kids. It wasn't going to change much just having one girl turn herself in. They needed more. They needed either all 4 of them, or they needed a bigger figure, someone like Vander. So that wasn't going to do much by herself. But the sentiment of her actions is clear through that act. You can tell what she was thinking. You can tell how she developed just within the span of 2 episodes, and that's really cool. So that was a bit of a tangent, but the point here is that Vi had to learn earlier in life, pre-time skip, about the nuances of leadership. You have to sacrifice certain things, you have to think about things that you wouldn't normally think about for the sake of those you try to protect and lead, and you just have to be intelligent, be logical, be level-headed. You have to temper that ambition you have, the reason you fight in the first place, with sensibility, right? That's what leaders need. And Echo himself has no doubt gone through this same sort of thing. He's had to learn this, I'm sure. He's gone through it, and I'm sure he's farther along in this development than pre-time skip Vi was, because he's successful. He's got all these people depending on him, and you don't get this far if you're an ineffective leader. Things would blow up in your face. You'd go on some sort of mission that would be a suicide mission. You'd be too reckless, that sort of thing. So he's done well, and I think he's learned the same things that Vi's had to learn. But it's difficult because who has he had to confide in about these sorts of things? We don't know for sure that he hasn't had anyone to confide in, but we aren't given any indication that he is able to do that. So I think it's a good assumption to make at this point in episode 7, that he isn't able to discuss these sorts of things, right? And so I think it must be very gratifying for him to see someone who's gone through those very same sorts of things in Vi, to see someone who understands a lot of what he's going through, and someone he just loves, you know? So this reunion is very important in a lot of ways, in illustrating the parallels between the 2 characters and how they've had to grow as leaders. Vi doesn't really have that role anymore, but she used to, and she's very intimate with the role, so she understands. And so I love that there's this mutual understanding between Echo and Vi because of their parallels. Vi can relate to having had to do these things, to hold in her impulse, to not be too reckless, to not wear her heart on her sleeve all the time. And Echo is the same way, obviously on a much grander scale. Obviously, the stakes are higher, but the sentiment is the same. So I think there's a natural understanding between the 2 for this reason. Sorry, I'm looking off to the side because I just have some bullet point notes. Oh, and one other thing is that in their scene, something that's really kind of cute is that while Vi was being held captive by Echo and they were kind of arguing back and forth, she had undone the chains. When she goes up to hug him, she just comes out of her chains, out of her bonds or whatever. So she had come out of those chains herself, but not attacked, not confronted him or anything like that. And she only does it to hug him. I think that's a great illustrator of where her heart's at, of who Vi is, of their relationship. It was just very sweet and cute that she was able to do that. I really liked that detail. And I kind of missed it while I was watching because I was so into the dialogue. So sorry about missing that little detail. And so along those same lines, I just want to emphasize again Echo's clear commitment to his cause. Like I've mentioned in the discussion already, he's very clearly still got emotionality. He's still very human. He hasn't cut off his heart. He still feels things. It's clear that he's not as cold and detached as he makes himself out to be initially in these interactions with Vi and probably lots of other people. But he has to do that to maintain this aura of power, to stop himself from getting hurt in some instances maybe. Parallels to how he feels about Jinx and how he's been hurt by that development. And he internally tries to reach out, I'm sure, but he's cut himself off in a lot of situations. And though that part of him is still there, that heart, it's clear that he's been effective in cutting that off because he's so successful. You don't become this successful, as I sort of alluded to, without being effective in this way. Someone who just acts on impulse and heart the entire way, you can't be a leader in this sort of society, in this sort of world, doing that. So, just very admirable. Lots of little things to grasp about Echo through what we see from him post-time skip. There's so much there. There's a duality to this character because, I keep stressing this. There's this heart, he hasn't cut himself off, but there's this commitment. And I think better than ever that's shown in his right before his fight with Jinx, because he sees her, he's very angry, you can tell just by his facial expressions, he's very determined to fight her, but he's also, he's emotional. It's an emotionally charged moment to face off against Jinx. But what does he do? He does a little sigh. Right before he starts fighting her and does his tick, 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 he does a little sigh. He goes, and then he smiles at her and begins engaging in the fight, where he's able to, despite having this connection to Powder, where he's able to fight her, despite constantly thinking about her, envisioning this time from their childhood where they'd play, and in doing so, envisioning the future fight that could potentially play out before taking the proper precautions through his time manipulation, whatever he's doing. But yeah, that sigh in itself is such a little action, but it tells you so much about Echo. It represents his ability to put all that aside, his acknowledgement that it's still a part of him as much as he may say that it isn't, that Powder is gone, blah, blah, blah. He knows deep down that he doesn't think that Powder is gone, but he says it to try and convince himself. But he shuts that vulnerability off when the time is right, because he's a leader. And that's what he has to be. Sorry if I'm rambling about Echo. I just think so many little details about him in this episode shown to us are so fascinating and make him such an elevated character in this episode. Something I noticed about when he was talking about all the Fallen and how they've given them freedom through their deaths. Again, some really great subtle storytelling. This is packed everywhere into the episode. He says that this is the mural, this wall of all these drawings of the people who they've lost, the people who have died. We see Vander, we see Milo, we see Clagger, we see Vi, who he might have thought to be dead, and we see Powder. Powder is on this wall, but he has known for a while that Powder is not dead. Jinx is alive, and he knows Jinx is physically the same person as Powder, but he refuses to accept that someone like this is the girl he once knew. And by doing that, he puts Powder up on the mural. Powder is dead. Powder is gone. Almost as a reinforcement to himself to have to accept this. It's a big show of conviction, but I think at the same time he's lying to himself a little bit. Because as we see, no, he hasn't completely lost hope in Powder being in there. He can't bring himself to think of Jinx as Jinx completely, and that Powder isn't in there anymore. He can't do that at all. So that's a great bit of visual storytelling to show that, one, he's trying to be the person he needs to be to make these difficult decisions, and up until this point he has done that. But he feels that to continue doing this, he has to think of Powder as dead, and so you do that as a result of that. But at the same time, I think he's also lying to himself a little bit, trying to convince himself along with other people, that Powder is dead, when she really isn't. He still holds hope for that. Vi still holds hope for that, and they're both right. Will Powder get completely buried later on? Maybe. But as of right now, she's still in there. And that hesitance, that deep emotionality in these little bits of storytelling it's more than the sum of its parts for Echo. It makes him so substantial and so great. But Vi and Echo then have a very interesting conversation, and they talk about Jinx, or Powder, and the nature of her attachment to Silco and where she's at psychologically. And what I find interesting is they both say two very different things in sort of opposition to one another, but both of them are technically right in some sort of way. Firstly, we have Echo telling Vi that there is no hope to getting Powder back. Powder is gone. Powder is completely gone. There is only Jinx, and she's their enemy, and there's no hope for getting through to her. Now, we know, of course, this is not true. Silco tried to baptize Jinx to let her completely kill off the Powder part of her personality. There were multiple reasons to that, many of which I discussed in my episode 5 reaction. You know, he wanted her to let go of Violet for her own psychological well-being. I think he wanted her a little bit to himself, maybe a bit of wanting to be the primary person in her life, perhaps, and maybe fear of abandonment or something like that after Vander abandoned him in his eyes. He sees so many parallels with her, connects with her in this way, and just wants to be closer with her emotionally. I'm going to get into their relationship and dynamic more later, but the point is that I'm trying to get at is they very much have a connection, but at the same time, Powder is still very much there. Through that baptism, he tried to discard that, and it didn't completely work, because in episode 6, when she got an inkling that Vi was alive and out there, she got angry at Silco, and all she focused on was trying to find her sister. And when they had their reunion and she was crying in her arms, that was Powder. That was that little girl. So that part of her is not killed off, not at all. As much as Silco would have tried to do that. So Vi says that. Vi says, no, Powder's still in there. I'm her sister, I know her better than anyone else, and I can get through to her. I think all of that's completely true. She's telling the truth there, and she's right when she tells Echo these things. But then at the same time, she's, I think, romanticizing things a bit. She's being a bit too overly idealistic and not realistic enough. Because Echo then says she's not a captive of Silco. She's doing these things because she wants to for him, not because she has to. They have such a close relationship. They are vital for each other. And they maybe love each other. They're at least very close to one another and have an intimate relationship. And Vi needs to accept this. She has problems accepting this, and she needs to. She needs to look at things with clear eyes and see the situation for what it is before then tackling things head on. She has to accept that. Because just pretending that Powder is the same girl that she always was is not true. It will not help anyone. It will just cloud her vision. And so Echo's right by telling her she's changed a lot. He's not right by saying that Powder isn't in there anymore, because she still is. But he is right in saying that she's not the same person that she once was. So, interesting conversation there. They then get Caitlin, they take her out of captivity, lots of great interactions between these three, lots of interesting dynamics. I like how they bounce off one another, and what's immediately notable is that Echo cannot trust Caitlin. He just can't do it. And you wouldn't expect him to, right? That's such a human thing to feel. Caitlin is an enforcer. And the only experience that Echo has had with enforcers has been completely horrible, leading to pain and tragedy and bloodshed and so much loss for him. So of course he can't trust her right away. Vi has some trouble trusting her right away through these past episodes, and the beginning of this episode as well. You can't blame them for that, given their upbringing. It's just a very human reaction that they have there. And that element of being raised that way, experiencing these sorts of things, and having them play a part in the amalgamation of your view on the world. That is an element in Caitlin's character too. But I'll get to that in a second. So they're talking about the gem, the Hextech gem, and what they should do with it now that they've recovered it at the end of episode 6. And Echo says, we should harness it as a weapon. Caitlin says something that really made me admire her character a lot. She says, I completely understand why you would want to do that. I understand where you're coming from. No one would blame you for wanting to do that after what you've gone through. No one would blame you for that. However, if you do this and use it as a weapon of mass destruction or whatever you're planning to do, and fight back against Silco, against Piltover, against whatever, this will only lead to more war, more bloodshed, more loss. This will just perpetuate the thing that caused such pain for you in the first place. And that's a very touchy subject. That's a very sensitive thing to say, because it may feel to people who are emotionally so connected to this idea of fighting back that you're invalidating their pain or their right to. So it was very good that she said, I understand your pain, I can't blame you for this, because I think that was key in gaining the respect of Echo, or at least having him listen. And she's right. She's right, at least theoretically. Doing that will only lead to more bloodshed and more war and more of the same. It will only lead to perpetuating the thing that led to you having to do this in the first place. It will lead to more loss, more factions rising up and falling, and more death, and all of this, more of the same. Now, do you really want that? Or do you want this to be resolved? Do you want people to stop dying? Do you want things to be prosperous? When she puts it that way, the answer to that is very clear. And so she says, we need to get this gem and give it back to Piltover, and in doing so form a truce and a deal that will lead to proper, harmonious prosperity for your people, and no more violence. Allow you to live a better life, and not attack Piltover at the same time. Just allow for this equality. And she says, I'm going to be the one to propose this, to give it to Jace. And she is the perfect candidate for this for multiple reasons. She's the perfect person to propose this plan. Now, reason one, she's intelligent, she's clever, she's open-minded and broadly aware of so many aspects of society in Piltover and in Zaun. And because of that, she's a great person to communicate this sort of compromise to Jace, hypothetically. But then there's so much more to this. Echo called her out for telling her all these things, all this pain that the Enforcers have brought upon his life. And he called her out for not properly believing it, for being hesitant to believe it, for being shocked and not fully buying into it at first. And that's a bit headstrong of him, but you can understand where he's coming from. Vi says, you know, she genuinely believes the things that she's grown up to believe. She has been taught a certain way, and it's not her fault that she doesn't entirely believe you at first. And Vi's right, because like I said about Echo, when you grow up believing certain things or experiencing certain things, you are inherently predisposed to think a certain way. That's just how the psychology works. And so, despite Caitlyn hating the aristocracy, not wanting anything to do with it, just being purely focused on wanting to make the world a better place and her own goals and her own endeavors, and not giving a shit about what's going on with the politics and societal hierarchies and any of that, it's been well established that she's not a fan of any of that Piltover stuff. But at the same time, I don't think she's ever thought actively that they're harmful or cruel. You know, she's looked at Enforcers and thought they were full of hot air and bullshit, and that they were incompetent. But I don't think she's ever thought of them as properly being as cruel as Echo says they are. And that's a big shock. Despite everything, despite how she feels about things, she's lived in Piltover her whole life, and she has not associated cruelty with it. So it's hard to come to grips with that. In that moment, what's going on in her mind is she's just having to reevaluate her entire life experience. This whole time, these people have been cruel. They've been violently oppressing people, not just passively, not just indirectly. And so it's hard for her to accept that, because that's what she's known her entire life. And having to change the way you think your entire life in this split second is so difficult. It is deeply difficult. Until you're put into that perspective, I don't think anyone can properly grasp how difficult that is. It's super hard. But the important thing is, she doesn't shut it out. She attempts to take it in and listen, and she's open to it. She's open to learning and changing her mind. She has difficulties, but she is open to doing it. And that is so admirable for someone who's grown up thinking a certain way to all of a sudden be open to thinking something horrible about the place she grew up, about people associated with her family and her friends. It's so admirable for her to be open to this. And she's so empathetic. She sees the state of things. She saw how things were in episode 6. It's clear that things are in dire straits. She listens to Echo. She hears the things he says about their situation. And she believes him. She's empathetic to their suffering. She knows what's going on. And she's open-minded to all of it. She understands Piltover, the politics there. Even if she doesn't like them, she knows the moving pieces and the variables there. And now she's well aware of Zon, of the Undercity, of everything going on there. And that's why she's this perfect candidate to be the one to convey this idea to Jace. She's pragmatic. This solution is, on paper, theoretically, something that will make sense, something that will lead to the best thing to happen for both parties. And she can convey the pain and suffering of those she's just met in the Undercity, while at the same time heeding the worries and the obligations and the things that need to be done in Piltover. So she is the perfect person to do this. Her open-minded nature and her yearning to go to this compromise and this truce reminds me of another character from this series from very early on. She's very much a reflection of what Vander tried to do, upholding this truce, this uneasy status quo. So the Firelights, in my opinion, are carrying forth Vander's sentiment and hope for a better life for those he loves in the Undercity. His legacy is being carried forward in this episode in multiple ways, because through Caitlyn, she is very much enacting his very same methods. She is carrying forward the spirit of what he wanted, about a lack of conflict. She's a reflection of Vander in this way. I didn't think I would ever be able to draw parallels between Vander and Caitlyn, but that's very much the case in my opinion. I think that's very, very cool. It adds lots of layers to Caitlyn and makes me respect her quite a lot more, and I respected her a lot already. And so I find it interesting that Vander was sort of being this role model and guidance for Vi early on through what he told her about, we need to temper these things. War is not the way forward. And Caitlyn's doing the same thing through bringing this to Vi's attention, this sort of idea of a truce, a hope for peace, bringing this to her attention later on. So I love how that works out. Caitlyn has always been focused on her idea of being what an enforcer should embody, as told to her by Grayson, of enacting her own form of justice, of benefiting the world. And through this is the way she sees it being possible, and she has a great point. Theoretically, this is a great solution. On paper. That's why I don't think it'll work. I don't think it'll work out in the way she hopes, because Jace has a lot on his plate. Who knows if he's going to be receptive to this idea? He's not the same person she knew. Now, at the end of episode 4, she got an inkling that Jace was kind of drifting away a little bit. She wasn't happy with the things he was saying and the direction he was going in. But I think she still harbors hope that he can, be that person that she grew to be such great friends with. Yet she doesn't know what he's been going through lately. And what he's been going through lately may lead him to not be super receptive to the idea. So it might not work out for that reason. Also, her and Vi, who knows if they'll be intercepted before they can get there. They're both weakened, they're both hurt. Who knows if they'll ever be able to even get there. And then there's the idea of Silco and Jinx, who could potentially stop that. Jinx and Echo had their fight, and there was a huge explosion, but neither of them are dead. They both have so much story left, they're not going to die right there. And it just so happens that the thing that Caitlyn is trying to propose, is trying to bring about, is the exact sort of thing, the exact reason that Silco tried to oppose in Vander. It's the whole reason that he went against him. He saw Vander trying to enact this truce, this peace, as weak and throwing away their respect. So if he gets a whiff of the idea that they're going to try to enact this deal, he is going to try to stop it no matter what. And that might lead to Jinx doing that. I'm not sure. Maybe he'll come back together with Jinx and they'll do something like that. Not too sure. But the point is, there are so many ways that this can go wrong, and that's why I don't think it will go right. So then I think a natural place to go to would be the Piltover situation. The Piltover plotline with Victor, Jace, Medarda, primarily. So we catch up with where Victor's at. He is meeting with Singed, his former mentor who he parted ways with and now comes back with. He said at the end of episode 6 that he realizes that he was right the entire time, or something along those lines, that the mutation must survive. So he tells him about his experiments and whatever, he definitely tells him about his situation with his looming death and how he wants to prevent it. And Singed offers a proposal. He says maybe the problem wasn't with the experiments or calculations, maybe it was with the test subjects. Maybe it didn't take and burnt out because there was something wrong with the biological makeup of the subjects. And he says that, to this end, nature has made us intolerant to change, but fortunately we have the capacity to change our nature. He then offers Victor a vial of Shimmer, a variant of Shimmer that would help to this end. And he says that it will bring about a violent change, the base violence necessary for change, I guess. And Victor, you can still see him teetering. You can still see the little boy that's a bit hesitant about this. And Sinch nonetheless sees right through all of this and says, you're not here because of the plants, right? You're here for you. You're a doomed man. And so he offers him the solution. And he says, those around you will probably hate you to test you for doing this. And what he says is that Jace will understand. He still harbors hope for Jace to understand this. And he's been given lots of evidence to hope that he will understand this. So it makes sense. I don't know if it'll work out that way, but we'll see. Then things move on. We get the scene between Jace and Medarda, and we sort of get a continuation of the visual storytelling we get from episode 6, where Jace said that Heimerdinger needs to be off the council, but was the last to vote to put up his hand for it, showing his regret and reluctance and pain through which he's doing this. And he verbalized this to Medarda. This isn't that important because we could already see that through what happened in episode 6. We could see that he wasn't happy about this. But I think it's important that he's opening up about this to someone. It's important for showing that their relationship is very intimate and understanding. And Medarda, in response, is understanding. We again see that soft underbelly to her. And she says something very interesting. She says that her family exiled her, but she, a part of her, still irrationally loves them, despite what they did to her. And so she understands why he feels so guilty about ousting Heimerdinger, despite feeling like it was completely necessary. And she can relate to that in a certain way. And it just adds more to Medarda, because more layers of compassion. She loves despite not wanting to. Part of why she wants to prove them wrong is for them to respect her, because she wants their respect, because she still cares for them, despite them being cruel to her. So, yeah, more great stuff from Medarda. A nice scene for their relationship, too. She says that Heimerdinger will understand eventually, and that, this is the way forward. You made the right decision, as it may have been difficult, but it was the right decision. Heimerdinger will understand. This is the way forward, and no more red tape. Funnily enough, I've been saying red tape since the beginning of episode 2 with the politics. That's the first thing I said when I sort of saw the restrictions around doing these experiments. So it was kind of gratifying to see it verbalized all the way in episode 7. Kind of cool. That was why I had that reaction when she said that. But first and foremost in Jace's mind is saving Victor, of course. So something I didn't mention in the discussion about this Jace and Medarda scene is that Jace is obviously doing hammer work. As Medarda comes in and says, hammer work is such a delicate art. She says this sarcastically because he's, pounding away at all these things. He's just working himself to the bone. And so I don't know I don't know what he was literally doing there. I don't know what the point was. I don't know if he was making a weapon, what he was doing, just doing it for the hell of it. But the point is, he was distracting himself by doing this hammer work. He was hiding away because there are so many things that are sort of sneaking up on him and putting pressure on his shoulders. There's so much that he's having to carry on his shoulders that he's hiding away. Medarda alludes to this by saying, I can stall the council, but you gotta get it together, right? For now, you can do this, you can hide away for right now, but eventually you gotta get this together. You gotta put yourself together, and you've got to take authority, take control. This is what you asked for, essentially, so you gotta rise up. You gotta be the golden boy. The stress of having kicked out Heimerdinger, what's happening with Victor, all the blockades he's had to do, all the pressure from the Undercity creeping up on him, and what that means for him and his operations. All of this is so much stress for him that he's hiding away here. I think that's the main reason he's doing all these things. He's hiding away. And that's a very human and understandable thing. He needs to gather himself. There's so much pressure in the limelight. He just needs to hide. But I think what's cool about this is it's said to us multiple times in the story that his father was in the hammerwork business. They crafted these tools. He is doing what his father used to do, the industry of his family. So he's coming back to his roots in this way. On one end, he's the man of the people, the leader of Piltover, this Piltover revolution. He's the face of Hextech. His name is up in lights, his face is on the blimps. But on the other, he is down and dirty and hardworking, and he puts his face to the grindstone, He works. He has not lost that sense of being an industrial person. Someone who is still very much attached to the sweat of his brow and that dirty work. that form the foundation for all of these societal innovations in the setting. So he's still in touch with that side of himself, but he's losing it. As time goes by, he becomes more and more of this golden boy as he drifts further and further away from these things that were his foundation, this industry, all of these sorts of things. But he doesn't forget them. Again, there's this constant theme with Jace drifting back to the things that made him the man he is today, and having emotional ties to it, nostalgic ties to it. And he doesn't ever want to forget these things. That's why he goes back to this hammer work. But also, in addition to that, I think doing this himself, feeling the tactility of the work he's doing, tangible work, making something, melding something with his own two hands, that is something he was not been able to feel. I think this is a manifestation of his psychological troubles right now. And what I mean by that is, throughout Act 2, he's been going down that slippery slope, as I've discussed. He's been trying to enact sorts of policies and executing all these orders because he feels that it will lead to a better future. It will lead to saving Victor's life. It will lead to a better society. It will lead to more progression for Hextech. And he sees the benefits of that. He's not, he doesn't have bad intentions. He never has. But the thing is, he does these actions and they feel darker and darker to him. He acknowledges this very openly when he talks with his mother. They just feel incongruent with the end product, the end goal. And so because of that causes discomfort in his psyche, I think. And so to counteract that, he needs to feel the tangible results of the decisions he makes, but they aren't in his hands. He can't grasp them. He can't see in front of him that Victor will be okay right now by the actions he's doing. He can't see in front of him that ousting Heimerdinger was the right decision. And so all these uncomfortable actions just add to this discomfort in his mind. And so what I think he does by doing these acts is not only just being in touch with his roots, his down-to-earth side that he's trying not to lose touch with, but maybe failing. I think by doing this, hammer work is a very blunt, in-your-face sort of thing. You do the work, and you see the fruits of your labor right afterwards. You meld these things, you mold these things, you make these tools, and when you're done, you're done. You see the tool right in front of you, it's done. I think that Jace wants to see the tangible results of the work he puts in some way. He wants to feel control. He wants to feel like the decisions he's making are having an impact. And hammer work is a way to do that. That's what I'm getting from this. I don't know if anyone agrees with that. I don't know if that's a commonly held notion. I don't imagine that it is because it's looking very deep into that scene. But that's what I believe is on his mind at this point in time. Hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense in my mind. And I think it's valid. I think it's very valid. It fits with Jace's journey. He needs to do these things. He needs to feel the result of his actions. He needs to feel these end products. As things spiral out of control, he has to have some semblance of control. And he grasps it through doing this. So continuing with this plotline, we then have the blockade at the bridge, separating from one side of the river, Piltover, the other side of the river, Zon, and stopping people from going in and out of the city. There is a lot of ruckus, obviously. There's a lot of fury over this sort of thing, understandably, after what Jace is having to do. And Victor doesn't approve of it at all. He's from the Undercity, so I think there's something in the back of his mind that kind of resents this lack of opportunity given to the people that used to be with him. And I find it kind of funny. It's a little humorous that Jace talks about how bad it looks that he puts up this blockade and his partner violates it to go to Singed in the Undercity. I just found that a bit humorous. But we then get a moment that's very, very sad because Victor's questioning him about why he would block off the people from the Undercity from coming here. We know why it is. He made this decision to stop all of these attacks. That's why he did it. But he also... there's also an element of a little bit of that discrimination going on. Victor says, "Why are you doing this?" Jace says, "They're from the Undercity." And he says, "What difference does that make?" What difference does that make? They're dangerous. Jace. It slips out, but it slips out and he doesn't probably 100% mean it, but nonetheless... that's where things are going. And Victor looks very disappointed. I'm from the Undercity. They're dangerous. I'm one of them. What are you saying? And it's just disappointing. Another big moment for Jace's slippery slope. And one of the most sad things about this slippery slope is that in many corruption arcs, the reason for this corruption or this character slowly losing themselves and drifting away is it tends to be, pride or power lust or ego or things like that. But the thing is, for Jace, it was care and love and heart. He had all these situations going on. He had many decisions to make, but he hadn't gone 100% in any direction. And then he learns that Victor is sick and dying, and he wants to save his life. And so, when faced with that sort of metaphorical ultimatum, he just decides, you know what, screw it. I need to do all these things. I need to go hardline on all these policies. I need to do all of this. And that is another big step on his slippery slope that leads to him drifting away even more and more from Victor, from the person he was at first, through these things that he's doing. And I find it sad that the result of that is not anything traditional. It's him loving his brother, him feeling pain at the prospect of his brother leaving him, and that's forcing him to sort of take a hardline stance on all of these things, to have conviction, to go all in on all of this. There's no more room for ambiguity. The time is now to act on everything, leading to situations like this. It's very sad. Then we see that Medarda gets a letter from her family. Very interesting. She sees this letter. I'm assuming it's from her family. It seemed to be some sort of crest. I don't know what else it could be. So she reads this letter and then immediately proposes a plan to Victor and Jace that they need to weaponize Hex Tech to stomp out all these little quarrels, all of this chaos that's happening on the borders and the blockades in the city in general, all of this. And she says, we're not going to use it to go all out on an offensive, but we should use it, we should develop this in case, in case we need to. Victor is not a fan of this at all. He says, we did this to improve lives, improve society, not to take lives. He isn't a fan of this at all, and this is very much against what Jace's original plans for this were. Very much so. But the thing is, Victor is very upset, which again emphasizes that, yes, he is doing this for his legacy. He has a big focus on his status, on carving in his own place in history. But he also wants to do it for good for society, because it's the right thing to do in his eyes. His ideals are very absolute. He wants a prosperous world, and he wants to contribute to that. Jace, though, doesn't back up his sentiment. Jace begins thinking about it, and there's such a sad look on his eye when Jace says, I need to think. I need to think about this weapon proposition. It's so against what they were initially planning, and yet he's thinking about it. And the fact that he doesn't reject it outright is proof enough to Victor that he's going along a path that I can't really approve of or abide by. And I think that makes up his mind. Maybe he thinks Jace is far too gone, and so that's just such a sad look because of that reason. We then, in their plotline, get a scene with Jace reflecting on all of this, reflecting on these decisions. He is genuinely thinking. Maybe some people may have thought that he would say he's thinking, but his mind was already made up. No, he is definitely thinking of the pros and cons and what he has to do. Interestingly enough, a cool Easter egg is that he's reading a book of history of society's past, and in the book is a picture of the flashback we got through Heimerdinger in episode 2. That was really cool. But what we see through that is he's researching the disasters that occurred all that time ago. He is interested in learning the downsides of this, the things that he should be cautious about, what led to these monumentally bad historic events that were caused by magic being weaponized. And so he's looking into all of that. He's very much thinking. He is trying his best. And in a beautiful reflection of episode 2, when his mother expressed her care for him and said, I was just doing what was best for you when I said that you had lost your mind, he gives her a hug and he says, I think I might need to do something that I never wanted to do, or something along those lines. And it's just so sad because he's losing himself. Everything that I feared and talked about up till now, it's coming up to a head. And you see there's like a fan letter written or drawn by a kid, a picture of Jace, it seems like, being the golden boy, holding some contraption that seems to be levitating him or something like that. And one more thing to add about Jace is that in the discussion, I guess in the part you just watched, I was talking about the drawing that he was looking at of him with that contraption maybe being a fan letter from a kid or something, I realize now that it's much more likely that it was just him that drew that himself when he was a kid. That's a representation of the dreams he used to have of making these discoveries and benefiting society. Because he's in his room, he's going through all these things, he's researching things, so he might have just come across some of his old childhood drawings and reflected upon them. And that's a very, very sobering thought, how he is thinking about making these decisions that he doesn't want to make about using Hextech for weaponry, but he is dwelling towards it anyway. He's feeling himself attracted to it, and he looks at the dreams he had of him as a child, and he just thinks in melancholy about how it came to this, you know? It being his own drawing, I think, is actually much more powerful, because it illustrates the before and after, and what things have come to. And there's so much regret, I think, he feels as he ultimately seems to conclude that, yes, I've got to weaponize Hextech. He goes down that path. He goes down the path that we would all predict him to go down, but he does it kicking and screaming, and he tries his best not to. And again, that hesitance and that way that he drifts back to himself and doesn't lose himself completely and is aware of what he really wanted from the start and seems to be aware that he's losing himself, that's the most disturbing thing about it. And that's why he's such a powerful character to me. But to Victor, I think he sees that, again, Jace thinking about this is confirmation that they're not on the same page. And so he goes, he injects himself with his variant, he seems to become mutated in some way. The shimmer makes its way into his bloodstream and fuses with the hemoglobin, the red blood cells. And yeah, he injected himself. I'm really hoping that the change isn't as monstrous as Singed hinted at. But I don't think we'll see Victor dying anytime soon, at least not by those natural causes. And, boy. But then, there's a scene with Heimerdinger. We see a short hooded figure, making its way across the river from Piltover to Zon, crossing that border. He moors his boat at the docks, and he starts making his way into the Undercity, hooded. What is he doing? I have no idea. He's being super sketchy. Now, could he be going to Singed? Because we know Singed is in the Undercity, and earlier in the episode, we learn that those two had a history, Singed and Heimerdinger. They worked together on scientific experiments, both of them were scientists in the past, and they diverged. What Singed said is that love and status and all these sorts of things, on the path to progression, you're going to have to dismiss those sorts of things. And that's why he couldn't stay with Heimerdinger. They didn't see eye to eye. That makes sense. Singed is a personification of this dark side of discovery, all these unknowns, all the sorts of things that Heimerdinger warns against. So naturally they clash, naturally they wouldn't be together anymore after that. But I wonder if for some reason he's going back to Singed. We know he has a connection there through him. I could be completely wrong, but that's just what sprang to mind. And I'm really curious about what his plan is. And one more thing I want to say before getting to what I think is the topic I was looking forward to discussing most about this episode. I need to dedicate a bit of time to Marcus. Marcus died this episode. He was a byproduct of this sort of war between these two factions. He was never able to enact his form of justice, and I find that pretty sobering. I find his entire character arc to be very depressing. A daughter will now have to grow up without her father because of what happened here. And it's just, from the beginning, I described Marcus as this young upstart, as this guy who is reckless and jumps in with reckless abandon and doesn't think about things. And that ended up being his ultimate undoing. I don't think his heart was ever truly in the wrong place. I think he had a sense of justice and misinterpreted a lot of what was going on in Zon. And because of that, made a deal with someone you should really just never make a deal with. Because once you do, you're just stuck with Silco. Oh, you're done. Marcus probably saw what was going on with Grayson. He probably suspected this deal, and because of it, he tried to enact things in his own way, to influence things in his own way. He probably felt a bit powerless. Grayson would stifle his advances at every opportunity. Whenever he'd go to question Vander specifically, to go to the last drop, she'd reprimand him for it. She wasn't having any of that. So I think the reason he did all these things is because he didn't feel very powerful. He didn't feel like he was doing things and benefiting society in the way he wanted. Through Grayson, I think he got the ideal of following your heart and benefiting society in the way you see fit and sticking to that form of justice. And he was just a bit too reckless and hot-headed in doing so, because he made irrational decisions, and in his quest for that ambition to enact this change, and I genuinely think that he had his heart in the right place and wanted to make this world a better place. But on the path to there, he just made the wrong decisions. His reckless ambition was his undoing. In a place like this, one slip-up, and you could find yourself bound for life in between a rock and a hard place. Marcus was never completely innocent, of course, but at the same time he inspires sympathy because of his situation, because of the contrast between what he wanted to do in life and what he was able to do, his daughter, all of that. It inspires sympathy. No agency despite being the sheriff. His life must have been hell. Throughout the episodes, he was a great demonstrator of what was going on in the politics between both sides, and showing this menace to Silco and all of that. He was a really good functional character, and he played his role quite well. I'm going to miss him quite a bit. And now we get to the part of the reaction that I was most looking forward to. Jinx and Silco. Now, up until this point, I've been sort of probing for what their relationship really means, for interpreting their relationship in a way that I can sort of grasp fully, and I think I've got there now. I think I understand it, at least in my opinion. Up until the end of episode 7, I think I have a good grasp of what's going on with their relationship and all the dynamics there. So I'm going to try to explain them here. And so the best way to segue into this Jinx-Silco situation is through a beautiful scene between Silco and the Council of Zaun. I forget what exactly they called it, but it was led by that guy with the really interesting character design, Finn. That scene was amazing for portraying who Silco is at heart. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So there are all these things happening. Trade routes are blocked off, so that's obviously hurting these people. There are problems and explosions, and Jinx is getting way too reckless with all these things, and it's causing problems for not just Silco's operations, but these people that he collaborates with. And it makes sense that there's this council for the Undercity as well, of people that have gotten together and formed this Council of Leadership. There are politics in the underworld just as well as they are in Piltover. Makes total sense, and I would probably have been disappointed if they didn't sort of delve into the more specific political situation in Zaun, so I'm glad they did. But yeah, understandably so, they're upset with Silco, led by this Finn, because he's just causing all these headaches for them because of his attachment to Jinx and because of his tendency to accommodate her beyond what seems reasonable for these people. And so they're getting upset, they're getting aggravated, and they're saying, what answers do you have for us? Why should we continue to put up with this? That sort of thing. They're offering solutions that are, interestingly enough, pretty similar to what Caitlyn presented. They're saying to give back the stone so that they can get some form of trade going, and because some trade is better than none at all. That's kind of interesting. But they're just upset, is the take-home point here. And they're aggravated at Silco and starting to disrespect him a little bit, it seems like. So in response, what does Silco do with Savika? Finn says, "How do you mean to bring Piltover to heel if you can't handle your own people?" And what is Silco's response? Complete and total authority. He brings in these gas masks. He starts letting this gas loose that is poisonous or toxic fumes, some sort of thing, and dangerous for anyone who breathes it in, these chemicals or whatever it is. Really distinct and awesome character designs for the other council members, by the way. I like them a lot. And so Silco brings in this toxic gas, reminiscent apparently of the mines that they used to work in when they were being oppressed. He says, "You people have forgotten your place. Do you remember where we used to be? Look where we are right now. You're getting a bit haughty and entitled and condescending on these council chairs. Let me lower you a couple of pegs. I'm the reason you're even relevant right now. Because of my operations, my ambitions, the way I organized all of this, I'm the reason you even have any of this. You have trade. You have all of these things that you're complaining about now. This will be fixed, and I'm the best man for the job, and you will listen to me." And he's doing all of this, some of it literally, some of it metaphorically. The message is clear. These people are gasping for breath, and he's giving them a lifeline, giving them these masks. You are nothing without me, is essentially what he's saying. I am the best leader for the Underground, and I will remain that. And any other plans you have are so feeble and weak-minded compared to anything I have in store. So you better listen to me. Just through this act, it's just so authoritative. so menacing, just how to do all of this just through this action. He pulled them all up from the depths. He offered them the taste of topside. He's the reason any of them have any of this, and he is not going to let them forget that, and he's going to make sure that if they're not grateful for it, they at least feel like they owe him. And he succeeds. What I find really great that was shown through, again, visual storytelling is that Finn, the guy who was trying to be this ringleader, is holding in his coughs for as long as he can. Him and Silco, the whole time, are the ones who don't have the masks on. And he's standing up to him, he's looking at him, not coughing, trying to challenge him in this way. Silco has no mask on at all, and he's completely fine. This guy has no mask, and he's looking up to him as if this sort of challenge of authority, and eventually he starts sputtering. He starts coughing a little. He can't hold it in, and he's trying to hold these coughs in, and they're little coughs, and then eventually he just falls down, and he's gasping, and begs for the masks, just as Silco planned. Just that went perfectly. And Silco gives it to him. He throws him his lifeline, just as he did in the past for these council members. He is the authority in Zaun. He will always be the authority in Zaun as long as he's alive, and these people better as hell not forget it. That was just so great. That was such an amazing scene for showing why he is this leader, why he has this aura of menace, not just in interpersonal relationships and interactions, but among the elite in Zaun as well. So it shows how he runs things through a lot of what we know about him already. Menace, cleverness, and results, right? But the thing is, there's one sort of chink in the armor here. Because the point of Finn was that he was losing his grip a little bit. His dog was off his leash, the dog being Jinx, that he's become short-sighted, that he's lost this control. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong about that at all. Silco is losing grip of Jinx. She's going haywire. She's upset at him for not revealing everything about Violet. She's doing all these things and he can't control her. And he's a bit out of his depth with her at this moment in time. So they're not wrong by saying that he's losing control, because he is. Jinx is out of his control right now. It was shown very clearly. And yet, he hides this so well with things that don't even matter. He offers them words that they better take at face value, because if they don't, he'll threaten them into submission. He'll do the sort of thing he just did again. So this was a great scene for showing, one, why he's such an authoritative and menacing leader of the underworld, but two, also showing the chink in his armor, because people are onto him. People are totally onto him, and all he's done in his defense is offer them shallow words and feeble deflections, but not solve the core issue, that being that Jinx is out of his control right now. And so the reason I think that is because he doesn't want to properly discipline her. I don't think he wants to push her away by restricting her in ways that may upset her, because he cares so much for her. From what I can see, Silco rarely ever, disciplines her. He rarely ever limits her in any way or derides her for any of her mistakes. He did for the explosion in episode 4. That's the only time I can really remember him doing it. He seems to be very open and understanding and overly accommodating for her. He bends over backwards for her, it seems like. And she is very much his weakness. But I think she is his weakness for a couple of reasons. So when Jinx confronts him and says, "You lied, blah, blah, blah," all of that, he says that he needs her. He needs Jinx. Silco needs Jinx. And of course, there are the material reasons for him needing her. He needs her to complete the weapon so that they can enact their plan and continue this war against Piltover. Of course, he needs her for that because she's a genius mind and she's the only one who can really do it. So yeah, he needs her for that. I think he needs her even more because he is so attached to her. I think he not only, I find it so funny because I was questioning in episodes 3 and 4, does he care for her? Is he just using her as a tool? Now at this point, I think it's very clear that by far the most important thing in the world to him is Jinx and his emotional connection to her and his care for her and her use as this person who can manifest this weapon is not as important to him as I think the relationship he has with her, in my opinion. I think he's latched himself onto her. That's what I get from his interactions with her. That's what it seems like. He needs her in multiple ways. He loves her. And I think the why behind this, I've come up with a couple of ideas. So I've talked before about how he can very clearly see parallels with her, both abandoned by siblings in their eyes, both suffering this sort of trauma, both oppressed their whole lives, being born in the Undercity. The parallels are clear. They're clear for all to see. And so obviously he sees himself in her. And I think he gets vicarious gratification by seeing a young version of himself living through her and seeing her succeed and prosper. That sort of thing. I think he gets a sort of vicarious fulfillment because, in his eyes, she's a representation of him. Him succeeding is an example of him rising up, but she's another example of that someone like him can find light in this world. Because maybe he doesn't see that light himself, maybe he doesn't see that hope for himself, maybe he doesn't see himself surviving this war, and wants her to live on, her to carry on his spirit, being an embodiment of the abandoned sibling, the oppressed undersider, all of these things that he is. And so I think he wants success for her in a vicarious way, whatever reason it may be. I'm just kind of spitballing about what those reasons could be, but I think there is a vicarious fulfillment he gets through seeing her succeed. So that's a sort of selfish aspect to it. But also he just genuinely cares for her. He cares for her well-being. I think he loves her, like a daughter. While he sees himself in her, I think he just grew to care for her. For everything she is. He wants the best for her. He doesn't want her to be hurt. And he's just latched onto her. That's what I'm getting. It's not what I would have predicted, but I think that's where we are right now. He is such an interesting character because he has this vulnerability now. And other people know it. It's clear. Maybe not that he loves her and cares for her in this way, but that he's lost control of her. She's left him a bit out of his depth. He's unflinching, authoritative, wholly powerful, and without blemishes. I'm just reading this off my notes because I had to write this down. Except for one thing, when it comes to Jinx. And I think that helps contextualize why he's so against Vi. I think I alluded to this before, but just to sort of sum it up again and put a bit more emphasis on it, Vi is a representation of Powder. Vi comes back, then Powder could be resurrected. Vi coming back is what stimulated all her trauma, but it's also what stimulated Silco in a reactionary way, wanting to kill the old Powder, for her to abandon that person and become Jinx. Now, why does he want her to do that? For her own well-being, sure. Because it would help him with his operations, sure. But also because Powder changed into Jinx. I'm simplifying. Powder, let's say Jinx was born the moment Powder saw Silco and was betrayed by Vi in her eyes. But Powder is not the person who has allegiances to Silco, who has a connection to Silco. Jinx does. The Jinx side of this character. So he wants to abandon and dismiss Powder and kill Powder because, simply put, Jinx only cares for him because of Jinx, not the Powder side of her personality. The Powder side of her personality is attracted to Vi. These are the two main people in her life. And so if Vi is out and about, she will drift that way. She will abandon him. I think he has genuine insecurities about being abandoned here. Probably festering insecurities that came as a result of him being abandoned in his eyes by Vander. Maybe he was abandoned even before that. Who knows? But I think it's clear that the reason he is so repulsed by Vi coming back is because that this means that there's a genuine chance that Powder may rear herself and Jinx may leave him as a result, and he doesn't want that. That's something I think I got from this episode. He needs her. There was so much emphasis on that quote, "I need you." What an amazing character, Silco. Just so good. And then so from the Jinx side of things, this all has me thinking back to the beginning of the series. I said that her fragility in episode 3 kind of took me aback, but I also said in that reaction that I kind of think I understood where that was coming from. That all had to do with her attachment to Vi. She was one-dimensionally attached to Vi. As long as things were going well with Vi, as long as she was being acknowledged and valued and told that she's strong and told that she's loved and hugged and all of this by Vi, everything was great. Everything was fine. She could survive and function quite regularly as long as Vi was by her side. But being told that she wasn't good enough or useful enough from her perspective, Vi didn't mean it that way, but that's how she interpreted it. To not join her on this mission, that made her lose it. Then, at the end of episode 3, being literally hit, being told that she's a Jinx, by the one person she stakes everything on. Vi stakes everything on Powder similarly, and Jinx similarly, but she has other dimensions to her life. She has things to fall back on. She has other relationships. Powder had friends. She had Vander, she had Milo, Clagger, everyone. But I think that Vi was pretty much the only one that really mattered. Like I said before in my episode 3 reaction, as long as everything's fine with Vi, everything's fine with Powder. But when Vi leaves her, she just leaves her because she needs to cool off. She didn't intend to properly say goodbye to her forever, but that moment was so conflicting and human. She was so filled with rage and grief. She had to just take a breather for a second. But as fate would have it, Marcus steals her away. Silco takes Powder. And so she sees that as being abandoned. And so the one thing in her life that she based everything off of is gone. What then happens? Someone reaches out a hand to her. That's someone being Silco, and she grabs it with reckless abandon. She has nothing in her life at this point because Vi has left her in her eyes. And so she pours everything into this relationship with Silco. He becomes the new Vi, to simplify it. I compared his relationship with her to her relationship with Vi earlier, but from her perspective, I think it's very much a one-to-one thing. I think she still loves Vi a bit more, but I think the relationships are very comparable in their strength, in the way she almost parasitically attached herself to them, to both Vi and Silco at these different parts in her life. And now, in response, Silco seems to be a little parasitically latching himself onto her a little bit as well. He doesn't want to be abandoned by her. That's why he does all this stuff with Violet. But now Vi is back, and she can't ignore that. I don't have much to say about the fragmentation of her psyche, about her psychological problems. I've covered that in previous episodes. The stuff with Milo and Clagger, Milo constantly whispering these things in her ear, her sort of subconscious speaking to her in that way, very haunting, very traumatizing and awful, and you feel so bad for her. And there was a great shot in this episode of her punching a mirror as she's patching herself up. All these cracks and shards in the mirror, showing her fragmented personality. Very symbolic. That was great. And I think the last detail I want to add is that before the confrontation between Echo and Jinx, Jinx is humming the song from episode 1 that she was humming when Vi had her to close her eyes as she held her hand and took her across the bridge and tried to shield her from these horrible realities of war. So that's an interesting callback. That's a nice reflection from how far we've come. And it's on the very same bridge, I think. So a very cool moment, very cool callback. So Silco gave her what she needed in that moment while continuing to grow attached to her. But now with Vi back, Powder's rising to the surface again, and those old feelings are coming back. Those old feelings that he being Silco, tried to drown in the water as he tried to drown Powder. They're coming back. She cares for Vi, and this has grown to a sort of dark manifestation of that care, of that one-dimensional parasitic attachment to her in the form of jealousy. So whenever she sees Vi embracing Caitlyn, super jealous. She sees Caitlyn as this devil, as this demonic presence, when that's not the truth at all. But that's how she sees it. You would expect something like that to be the case with how her mentality is at this point. So yeah, it's this darkness, this envy that she now has. Whenever she thinks about anyone other than herself being close with Vi, she gets very possessive and lashes out, aggressively, attacking people. It's like, it's very much a sort of, if I can't have her, no one can sort of mentality, from what I can tell. And so she's doing all this stuff, and Silco at the same time needs her. So it's a very interesting situation going on. And I'm not exactly sure how it's going to pan out. Last we saw of her, she was blown up, but she'll surely live, like I said before. Same with Echo. Maybe Silco will find her somehow. I don't know. But what is clear to me is that Silco loves her. He is going great lengths for her. He is compensating and bending over backwards for her as she is sort of leaving him behind and bringing up these abandonment triggers for him. And I think all of this sort of fell into place this episode for me. Again, this is just theory crafting. This is just my interpretation. Maybe the story will prove me wrong. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I'm wrong. But I do think that a lot of this has basis in what's been given to us by the story. And hopefully you found, listening to this, to my interpretation of their relationship 7 episodes in, to be interesting or valuable in some way. I can only hope. So yeah, not too much to say aside from that. I think I've covered everything. She has the fight with Echo. I've already gone over that. We see how Echo still harbors hope for Powder being in there somewhere. She couldn't really care less about him. She seems to have no qualms about attacking him. And she calls him the Boy Wonder very sarcastically. The Boy Savior, actually, sorry. And yeah, they do that awesome fight. My jaw drops. Peak fiction. Kino. Oh boy. That was so good. I'm losing my voice a little bit. But it's been worth it. I love discussing this episode. I love discussing this series. Only 2 episodes left. I'm getting a little bit sad. But I hope you enjoyed. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you in episode 8, the penultimate episode. Until then, stay well. Thanks very much, everyone.